And I'd like to welcome you to the 35th year of the Native America Speaks program. This is the longest running Indigenous speaker series in the National Park Service system. So we're very thankful to be able to put it on. This program, as well as other critical programs like it, wouldn't be possible without your donations to Glacier Park Conservancy. And so thank you so much if you are a donator. Before we begin, I do want to respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of the Amskapi-Bukani, the Blackfeet people. And on the western side of the park, we are also on the lands of the Salish, Kootenai, and Kalispel tribes. So we'll take a moment to respect that. And without further ado, we'll introduce Treyace Yellow Owl. She is an enrolled Blackfeet member of the Blackfeet tribe. She was born and raised in Browning, and from the age of 5, she attended a Blackfeet language immersion program. And so she is fluent in her native language. Treyace has extensive knowledge in the history and language of the Blackfeet people, and she is involved in this program to spread positive, accurate, and dependable knowledge of her people. So let's welcome Treyace Yellow Owl.
Thank you. We'll wait for the others to come. Thank you for that, and thank you guys all for coming. This is awesome. I get to be a part of the program. This is my first summer doing it. Just to start off, we'll wait a little bit. No. Okay. Get matsu nog poa and oxysicoi. Mistona go kagega katusi. Nixasana sta kina pupita ki ginina anasta okiowana. Nim dohto bastansi tsata ki natu kiokasi. Nisum skapi pikana ki apatsot pikania ki akena ki. Hello everybody. I welcome you all here. I hope everyone's having a good evening. My name is Treyace Yellow Owl. My Blackfoot name is Many Stars. It was given to me by my grandfather when I was 8 or 9. I was born and raised here in Browning, Montana. I grew up on the Cut Bank Creek and the Two Medicine River. Not way up here. I grew up on the flats. I'm a prairie girl. I'm an enrolled member of our Southern Piegan tribe, but I am a descendant of the Northern Piegan and the Bloods in Canada. So just to start off with that, you are on the Southern Piegan Reservation. This is Skapi Pikani. We are part of a Confederate tribe. We have 3 sister bands in the north. We have the Akenekoans, the Bloods, the Abatsot Pikani, the Northern Piegan, and the Siksika, the Blackfoots. Long story short, when the U.S.-Canadian government solidified the U.S. border, we got stuck down here. Our comrades, our sisters and brothers were stuck up there. A little fun fact with the border, it was my people who actually were the reason why the border was solidified. When we were starting to be pushed onto reservations, when we were starting to be confined, we were still raiding. We would raid ranchers and farmers and raid cows at the time. We were they were starting to make us dependent on commodities, but commodities weren't too good. And so our people, if they were getting chased by the cavalry here, we noticed that the medicine line, the border, was something that kept the cavalry down here. So if we got in trouble down here in America, we just zipped it to Canada, and if the Mounties were chasing us, we zipped it to America. So the U.S. Canadian governments were like, what are we going to do? These Blackfeet are tromping all over our country. So they solidified it. I don't know exactly what year, but I know we were stuck down here and our sister tribes were up there. So just to start off with some history, my reservation, the Blackfoot Reservation, this is the treaty product of the Lame Bull Treaty of 1855. Lame Bull was a Blackfoot chief. My reservation borders are creeks. So we have the mountains, we have the peak to peak to peak, they say, is how our reservation ends to the west. We go all the way down to the south, you hit Birch Creek, come to the east, and you're gonna hit Cut Bank Creek, and then to the north, the border is where my reservation ends. Our reservation is one of the oldest treaty reservations in Montana, and they also say that the Lame Bull Treaty is actually the treaty that paved the way for other treaty reservations. There are 3 treaty reservations in Montana, us of course, the Crow tribe, and the Salish, Kootenai, Kalispel. Rocky Boy, Fort Peck, Fort Belknap, those are executive orders or statute orders or congressional statute orders, meaning that they had to go all the way to Congress, they had to go to Helena, they had to basically prove that that was their land and they deserved it. My reservation, my people actually fought for this land. Our treaty was the first treaty signed, and when they signed it, there were pictographs. That's how old our treaty was, that's how old my people, that's how long my people have been on a reservation. Let's see, so we are in Upper Two Medicine area. Natuokiokasi, Two Medicine, this place, the river and the two lakes are very important to my people. Two Medicine got its name from two medicine lodges that were down on the river. The story that I was told was my people were either sick or dying. It was a harsh winter, something happened, and we were low on morale. It was a really hard time, and we were going south, and we come up on the river, and there was medicine lodges, two medicine painted lodges. Whoever those holy people were that were there helped us, and we named Two Medicine. Let's see what else.
Hi there.
Hello.
Sorry.
It's okay. So, again, with my people, with my culture, our language is an Algonquin language, meaning it is one of the oldest living languages in America, in the world. We have been here. I have heard of archaeological sites predating us 10,000 years, but we do actually have one here on our reservation. They're digging deeper, and they got to 15,000 years, and they're still finding our boiling pots 10,000 years down. So the people, you know, the ongoing question is, did we walk the Bering Strait? I can tell you we never. There's too many artifacts, there's too many historical facts, historical sites and archaeological sites that date us here and on this territory in our reservation way before the Bering Strait. My people at one point in time were 3 million strong before Euro colonization. My people's territory reached from Edmonton all the way up in northern Saskatchewan, Alberta, all the way down to the Yellowstone National Park. Now, Yellowstone, we have treaty rights down there just like us, but we share those treaty rights with the Crow and another tribe, because Yellowstone, we mostly dominated that area, but there were times where we didn't use it and the Crows used it. But at one point in time, like I said, we were 3 million strong. During the early 1800s, the cavalry, the president at the time, sent the cavalry here to see if they could scoot us out of our territory. The generals wrote back, said, it's 10-1 us, what are we gonna do? We're not gonna be able to fight these Blackfeet. Let's find another strategy. So they remembered what happened to the Choctaws, the Cherokees on the Trail of Tears. They sent the same blankets of the same smallpox infested blankets to us. And in my people's culture, in my culture, there are 3 important things that you can gift a person. It is food, blanket, and a place to stay. Survival. That's what you need to survive, right? So my people graciously took the blankets, and the government wiped out 3/4 of our nation. We went from 3 million strong to about 300,000 strong. And if that isn't a deficit on a culture and a civilization, I don't know what is. So we were 300,000 strong. Over time, neo-colonization took part, and we are on the 4 reservations. Up there they call them reserves, down here they're reservations. We are on the 4 reserves that we are today. We are still a proud, strong, and resilient confederacy. We still have ties. I have tons of family up north. People have tons of family down here. We are still completely resilient. I actually have family here. You see that cute little Indian boy right there? He's been in my hair all day. So there's our history. Our people have been here since 1885. Our reservation, our original reservation, actually went from the Rocky Mountain front all the way down around Shoto and came back up around Shelby. Sadly enough, something happened in Shoto with 3 priests and a couple Blackfeet young girls. Very bad things happened, and inevitably 3 priests were killed and our people got moved farther. So there are a lot of historical facts, there are a lot of history that went into keeping us here. But this place right here, we fought. My ancestors fought tooth and nail to keep us here. And my people in the Niitsitapi, we called ourselves the real people. We were perfect beings at one point in time. The hierarchy of needs is based off of the Blackfoot people. Abraham Maslow stayed with the Abatsotpikani, the northern pagan in Brockett, for 2 years before he came out with the hierarchy of needs. So my people, we strongly protected this area, especially the mountains. A lot of the Glacier National Park trails that you guys will be taking, hiking trails, those were actually Vision Quest trails. They were already trails that we had been using for thousands of years to come up here to pray, to fast, to gather. That is one of our treaty rights that we fought for when we gave the park to the government. When Glacier National Park became a park, we fought for treaty rights. Our treaty rights were to hunt, gather, and fish in the park. To this day, I still exercise my treaty rights. I've gotten into some trouble with some rangers here and there. But our people fought for this area because this area has so much more. During my interview, I was actually smelling some peppermint around here, licorice root, aspen. We don't have any aspen around here. There are a lot of medicinal plants used here. There are a lot of plants that we used as neosporin. Lots of plants that we used for tummy aches, for toothaches. There is a fungus that will grow around right around this time that we boiled and used for toothaches. Stuck it on your teeth. So this area that you're in right now was mostly, the purpose was mostly for hunting and gathering. We weren't much of mountain people. We didn't live in the mountains, but we did rake the nice things that come from it. We were a plains people, but we were nomadic. We weren't farmers. We didn't plant the chokecherry trees. Those have always been here. Huckleberry, Sabbathberry, or some people call those June berries. I just learned that this year. I never knew people called Sabbathberries June berries. We were nomadic. We traveled near and far. We rotated our camping grounds. We rotated our territory, and we were fire starters. That's where the story comes of Blackfoot. My people knew that if we lit prairies on fire, what grows the next spring? New, green, good grass. And grass brought the buffalo. So we were kind of a little ahead of our times, but the story I heard of us being called Blackfeet was we walked through one of our burnt prairies and we had Blackfeet. One notable thing about the Blackfoot people were our moccasins. When we make our moccasins, when we put the sole together, they would actually, in between the sole and the top of the moccasin, we would sew a piece of rawhide or a piece of cloth and make a tail at the end. And that was our way of showing visitors, other tribes of other territories, that we were walking, that was our territory. People seen the tail, the tongue coming out of the back of the moccasin and ran the other way. But I have to say, I know my people were called the Lords of the Plains, and at that we were. There are bones and artifacts found of Blackfoot people where a woman was 6'5", a man was 6'7". I'm barely 5'6", so I couldn't even imagine my ancestors. But we were, in a sense, we were the Lords of the Plains. We did have vast, huge territory that we ruled, but we weren't a warring tribe. I know there's history books and there's different stories of us being these like really fierce killers that killed people, but we were actually more, I like to explain my people as hippies. We really respected spirituality. We really respected other human beings, you know, just me to you guys right now, we're all the same. That's how I was taught. Wars were brought upon us and we would beat them. I think it was mostly our height. that had to do with it. But we weren't a warring tribe, and counting coup was one of the greatest things that my people had, because a warrior can run up a foot away from another warrior and hit him and say, I respect you enough to let you live, but I'm strong enough to be that close from you, to kill you. Our people were the only people to wear top knots. If you see any pictures, historical pictures of Native Americans with a great big knot of hair, mostly Blackfeet. That was a taunt. Our warriors wore top knots because that's an easy scalp, hey? If you got close enough to cut that scalp off, you know, you killed them. So our people were very prideful, we were very dominant, but we were also very respectful in that sense. But to wear an arrow top knot, to wear a top knot as a warrior meant that you were the bee's knees, I should say. You were like, if you were an old man and you still had a top knot, man, you was this it. You was probably chief now. Let's see, another history. So another fun fact about our people is that a lot of people only think that we ate meat. And meat, buffalo was kind of wasn't actually a huge part of our diet. Meat wasn't. What was a big thing about a huge incorporation in our diet was actually our roots and our plants, our berries. We were preservationists. We knew how to preserve meat. We knew that kidney fat preserved crushed up choke cherries. I've had choke cherry pies before. They're pretty good. Dry meat wasn't a huge thing. Dry meat soup was something that we ate in the winter time. My people were constantly moving. Come this time of year, way back when, we would be gathering. The women would be out getting as many medicinal roots and plants, as many berries, anything, so that we had because we had really long winters. I mean, just last year, Browning was in a state of emergency, and that was only because of 20-foot drifts. Could you imagine the winters 100 years ago? Oof. So my people were, that's one fact that people can't not get wrong, but meat was probably, I'd say 40% of our diet. We drank bone broth. That was more, it's actually proven to be better than coffee. It don't taste very good. I don't recommend drinking bone broth. But we ate turnips, there's wild onion that grow around here. You know, there was a huge, vast vegetation that was incorporated into our diet. We were very well-rounded. We also had a lot of endurance games that we let the young boys play. You know, our people were a working people. Come on up. It's okay. Our people were always working, always on our toes. Everybody had a purpose. In the Siksika, Sitapi, and the Blackfoot Confederacy, and the Blackfoot way of knowing, we all had a purpose in life. You know, the women and the men. And another thing that people get wrong, history books get wrong, is that we were a patriarchal society. But we are one of many indigenous peoples that are matriarchal. The history books show all the chiefs signing the treaties, but they never ever acknowledge the fact that every single one of those chiefs' wives were standing behind them. And actually, when it came down to it, our men, if they wanted to move camp, say tomorrow, they had a meeting. All the men had a meeting, said, we're gonna move camp tomorrow. They went home and told their wives, and old wifey Pooh said, no, 4 days. Well, 4 days. You know, we were a matriarchal society. A woman sits holy in our okons and our sun dances. It is a woman that does it. In a Beaver Bundle, if the lead woman isn't there, you can't have the Beaver Bundle. Say, if her husband was sick, she can just appoint like somebody and say, all right, we're gonna have the ceremony. But if your wife's sick, you just stay right there until that woman is there. So our women and men, we were a matriarchal society, but we were also very balanced. In our teepees, the women sat on one side and the men sat on the other. Not to show that we were different, but to show that we were equal, because everything comes to the top of a teepee, and we balanced each other. So that's one thing I like to tell people, and I like to remind all the women out here, you use the boss, not the man. That's why that's the big joke in Indian countries. Blackfeet women are real mean, but we're the boss. Let's see, what is that? Can I answer a question? Does anybody have a question?
What's a beaver bundle?
So a beaver bundle, so okay, that's a really good question. My culture, our spirituality, the way I like to explain a beaver bundle is it was like our church. It was a ceremony that we opened, and it was a ceremony that was given from St. Mary's Lake. They say Waterton or St. Mary's is where it came out of. The story is that a young boy was crying at the edge of the lake. The story I was told was that there was this young boy crying at the edge of the lake, and a beaver swam up to him. He said, "My father wants to talk to you, come with me." And they dove down into Paktomksikimi, into St. Mary's, and there was a whole other world there, the Suyata Peaks, the underwater people. And that was when he was given the beaver bundle. It was something that needed to be brought back to our people at that time. It was a sense of prayer. It was a ceremony. It is a ceremony. The young boy brought it back, was told everything, and in a ceremony, in the beaver bundle, there's otter skins, there's cranes, there's preserved animals in there that we dance and pray with. And really what it is like it's like our New Year's. So Blackfoot New Year is in the spring when everything's coming to life, when animals are being born, when babies are being born. When there's new life, we pray for new life. We honor that. That's when our thunder pipes open. That's when our beaver bundles open. That's when we have the Sundance will actually probably be going on next week. But it was one of our ways that we prayed. It was a ceremony. It was something of great importance. It still is of great importance. You need a man and a woman. There's a lot of teachings within a beaver bundle. And when you are a beaver bundle holder, a ksistaki, if you're a crazy dog, if you are anything of spiritual, of higher power like that, our people really emphasize living good lives. So when you own those bundles, when you own those ceremony, a pipe, a rattle, it's a tool to lead us to our spirituality, is a tool to keep us going in the right path. They are tools that keep us grounded. You know, when you're a beaver bundle holder, when you're any kind of ceremony person, you can't get mad. When you're a bracelet holder, you can't hit your kids. Your aunts and uncles do it. The aunts and uncles do the discipline. And to me, my understanding of our ceremonies is that it was a tool. It was our tool to get to Creator, but it was a tool to live a good life because it gave us those teachings, you know, to have a kind heart, to have compassion, to be empathetic, to be human is really what our bundles, what our ceremonies are about. You know, they're about healing right now. When they do the Sundance, our Sundance is for healing. It is for prayers when people do vows, you know, addiction, somebody has cancer, anything like that. We're praying for long life. Misami Bata Bisini. That's one thing that our people pray for, is long life and survival. And that's how I like to explain our ceremonies. Again, it's hard if you're not there, but that's what they are. They were tools to keep us in a good straight path. You know, they were like reminders. You know, long time ago, our social structures, our social standings were a lot different. We had societies, and those societies in themselves had a job. The Ganaksamidax, the crazy dogs, were like our police. They did everything. Something bad happened in the camp, the crazy dogs handled it. You know, nobody else handled it but them. They were the ones that sent the war parties. They were the one that kind of did that. And then our ceremony people had a higher power because they were the ones that kept our spirituality. They were the ones that kept our morale, hey? Kept us up. Because prayer, spirituality and prayer is the biggest thing that you can have. And I'm not saying that you guys all need to convert to Blackfeet. You know, I respect everything. I respect Christianity, Catholics, Hinduism, anything. You know, that's just one of the teachings that I was taught within ceremony, within your prayers, is you respect other people's prayers, because all prayer is good. Whoever is up there, Alpha, the Omega, Creator, Buddha, who's ever up there, he's probably the same person, and it's just our way of gifting him, talking to him, helping him take our sorrow away, our hurt, our sickness. But that's what our ceremonies are all about, is bringing us together, praying, healing, having that power. Anybody else?
How many tribal members do you have now?
So according to our last census, I'm pretty sure it was 15,000, over 15,000 enrolled members. That's just here though. Up in Canada, our sister tribes, the Canadian government was a little more lenient towards Indigenous people than the US government. Our brothers and sisters to the north have retained a lot more of our language, have retained a lot more of our culture because their boarding schools were different. But in Canada, they don't have blood quantum. Have you guys heard of blood quantum? So in America, you have to be 1/4 Blackfeet, Navajo, Apache to be considered Indian. Exactly. Isn't that crazy? We're like thoroughbreds. And I'm a half. I'm a little under a half, guys. But so up down here, they incorporated blood quantums, and I think if we didn't have blood quantum and we counted our descendants, they're actually the guys that are little under a quarter Blackfeet. If we counted them, we probably be about 25,000, 20 to 25,000 strong. But sadly, old U.S. government has us breeding like we're cats and dogs. So that's another history note I'd bring to light. Our government put us through boarding schools. Yes, boarding schools were real. Yes, Carlisle, Chamawa, all of those things were real. The terrible monstrosities that happened to our people were real. I don't like to dwell on them though, and I don't want you guys to dwell on them because, hey, I'm here. I'm a Blackfoot woman and I'm standing in front of you guys. I have my aunt, my cousin, my sister, my little babies right there. They're Blackfeet and they're here. But the U.S. government was pretty terrifying. They were between a whole 100 span from the early 1900s to now. There was a huge chain of historical trauma that happened. You see the town of Browning, it's not very pretty to look at, is it? It's not. We do have poverty, we do have drugs and alcohol addictions. We do have everything and anything that any other city in America has. Ours is just a little more dominant and prominent because we're a smaller community. But the deficit that my people are in right now is the result of neo-colonialism. The neo-colonial state that my people and other people, not just Blackfeets, that other people around Indian country, it's not good. We didn't eat milk, we didn't eat sugar, we didn't have salt, we didn't have pepper. We have a lot of health problems, a lot of diabetes. And it's because only within 100 years were we introduced to sugar. Only within 100 years were we introduced to alcohol, to milk. We have a lot of people that are lactose intolerant. Native people are lactose intolerant because ancestrally in our DNA, we never drank milk. We never had cows. You drank from your mom and then that was it. So
How many of you can speak your indigenous language?
right now, down here on the Southern Piegan Reservation, there is probably, I want to be lenient and say 50 to 80 fluent speakers. In 1975. Okay, so in the late 70s to early 80s, Dr. Daryl Robes Kipp, Dr. Dorothy Stillsmokin, and Thomas Redman Little Plume actually conducted a survey. And back then, it was terrifying. They did a reservation-wide survey, and they seen at that time, people 55 plus could speak your language. They're fluent. They could sit there and talk. 50 to 55, they could understand, they could talk, not so much. 40 to 50, a few words here and there, and 35 down, nothing. Nobody could speak our language. And so in 1991, the first immersion school, Moxon Flat, was built. Daryl Kipp, Dorothy Stillsmokin, and Redman Little Plume were the founders of it. And they actually based our immersion school off of the indigenous schools in Hawaii. Hawaii was having the same problem back in the early 60s. They noticed nobody was speaking Hawaiian. But what they found out was when they sent their kids to grandma's house, the kids came back talking Hawaiian. And it was because grandma, you know, obviously wasn't going to talk English if she didn't know English, so she spoke Hawaiian. So Daryl Kip and them went to Hawaii, and in the early 80s, the Hawaiians had their immersion schools, but they called them grandma houses. That's what they were called, grandma houses. So Daryl Kip and Redman and Dorothy come together, and they said, all right, well, we can do that. There's 100 fluent elders on this reservation right now, over 100, we can get them to come in. And at that time, Moxon Flat only took about 10, 15 kindergartners. And boy, did it blow up. Those kids were speaking the language, the elders, the morale in our elders boosted, you know, and they were like, oh, okay, all right, this works. So in 1995, Cutswood School, the school that I went to, was built. And they can only take about 30 kids now, but that's still a huge thing. And same basic principle, my elementary school years, my middle school years, I was taught by elders, all kinds of elders from all over the place. And all they did was talk. In our school, once you step foot in that school, we had to speak Blackfeet, which was really awesome. I'm very honored, blessed, and happy that I went to the school. But from the early 80s to now, how many of them elders are dead now? You know, how many of those people have lost it? Like I said, the neo-colonial state that we're in, it's not good, because boarding schools, there was this gap between the grandparents that went to boarding school and their kids. Because what happened in boarding school was terrible. We were beaten. We were told, you're a heathen. Speak English. Your language means nothing. So it caused a great big ripple effect. Caused our elders to say, like, they were just like, nope, I'm not teaching my kids, because if my kids talk Blackfeet, they're going to go to that school. And it was tough. I remember my mom telling a story. My older sister went to Cutswood School, and my mom's dad, my grandpa John Dean, his father was still alive, John DeRouche. And John DeRouche, my mom's grandparents, could speak Blackfeet, my great-grandparents. My grandpa John Dean told my mom to take my sister out of the school. There's no need for it, it's dead. That's what he said. He told my mom, take her out of that school, she don't need to go. The language is dead, we're in white man's world. My grandpa John, my great-grandpa, was sitting there and heard what John Dean said, and John Dean said, tell her, Dad, tell her, take her out of that school, she don't need to go. And John DeRouche, my grandpa, sat there and thought for a long time, and then he finally spoke up and he said, no. He said, I was wrong for not teaching you. He said, my girl, you keep your daughter in that school. And when I was 1 or 2 at the time, and he said, when she gets older, you put her in that school. He said, I'm really sorry that I didn't teach my children the language, because it's not dead. It was never going to die, but I had a hand in not keeping it alive. And so that story had stuck with me, and I've just learned my language. But again, there is that generation between my mom's parents and their parents where it wasn't cool to be Native. It wasn't cool to be Indian. It wasn't cool to be Blackfeet. And that generation is the generation that lost our language and culture. And right now, my people are in a preservation state where we are fighting tooth and nail to keep our language alive, to keep our culture alive, to keep our religion alive. Right now in Canada, there's not an act down here, but there is the oh, it just slipped my mind. It's basically a Relocation Act, and I can't remember what it's called right now. But what the Canadian government is doing right now is they're going through all their museums and the artifacts that are Indigenous, that were from Indigenous communities, Indigenous people, they're giving them back. So with that, what is it called? Yep, there we go. Him. What is it? NAGPRA. With that act, we are getting more of our bundles back, with more of our ceremonies, because at one point in time, there was another point in time during colonialism where there was what my grandpa Gilbert said was crooked people that were stealing bundles, that were stealing artifacts from elders, from holy people, and selling them. So they'd bring them to the museums, sell them, and that was it. That was done. We have bundles. There are trace bundles. There are artifacts that are in Germany right now. And I've heard stories from Germans, that from the security guards, that say when they walk down those halls, they can hear crying, they can hear songs, they can hear a different language being spoke. And that's most likely those things wanting to come home. So hopefully with the Canadian government and all their strides and all their positive things that they're doing now, I really hope that our government starts to do that, because right now we're in this gray area where we can get our artifacts back, but the government makes it really hard. So we have to prove that they were ours. We have to prove that somewhere within 100 years it belonged to me. Well, how am I gonna prove that oral history? That's another thing about our people, is nothing was written down. We have writing on stone up in Alberta. That was a sacred place. Those are the best recorded pictographs of my people. The last pictograph was drawn there in the early 1900s by Chief Bird Rattler, and he actually drew a train and a car. It's super cool. I always wanted to see it, but I've seen pictures of it. But he drew a train and a car in his drive up. But other than that, our language was mostly our language, our history, our culture, our teachings are all oral based. Hence why, another reason why the government tactics worked is because we didn't have books, we didn't have recorders back then. It was just, I'm gonna take your kid and you'll see him in 18 years. Basically is what happened.
Is your language written?
Kinda, vaguely. Right now, we do have some people that see, the thing about writing our language is it's really weird. I'll tell you a word, like, get the peaks. Like, how do you write that? Like, what is that? Like, I don't even know what that is. And then there's also the generational issues of elders trying to keep it oral. You know, my generation, I would love for it to be written down. I think it'd be easier for me to remember it. But there is this generational gap again of older people trying to keep our old ways, and I respect it, I really do. But right now, in 2019, we need it to be written. And there are elders that have come up with an alphabet. It's a little strange, but it is actual phonemic alphabet writing. It is actual phonetics, and I really like that about it. But can't teach an old dog new tricks. That's the thing. No offense, but that's the thing right now. When we come together as a confederacy, it's a huge fight, because some elders are like, no, keep it oral. We never wrote. Some elders say, well, okay, well, I want it written this way. Somebody's going to say, no, I want it written that way, you know. So right now, there are strides to making it a written language, because the Flathead Reservation and the Crows are starting their own alphabet. And I think it's the coolest thing, you know, and that's one thing I got up in front of some elders, and that's what I said. I said, why not make it a written language? Why not have our own alphabet to give it ownership? It's our language. Why are we trying to write Blackfeet with English writing? Why are we trying to have Franz, can't remember his first name, the Blackfoot dictionaries. Have you guys ever seen a Blackfoot dictionary? They're super weird. Coming from a language speaker, it's really, really hard to read those words, because they are from elders from long time ago, but it was a white man writing it. It was somebody else trying to be like, okay, well, how am I gonna, okay, K-A-H, K-I-H, like, what am I gonna do? Okay, this little apostrophe means, and then 10 years down the road, somebody's like, well, what does this mean? Like, is it a stop? Is it a breath, or is it a, you know? So that's one thing. I really hope my language is going to be written. We do have some younger people working on an alphabet, but it probably won't be set in stone until, like, I'm old and I get a say. 'Cause right now, I'm 20 and I don't get to say a lot. I mean, I do, but when it comes to an elder, it's not my time. But our language should be written. I agree. I think we should have our own alphabet. And I think I know it would keep my language going. Because right now we're in a world where we all read books. I like to read books. I'm a bookworm. I'm a nerd. I like to read Facebook. You know, why can't we type on Facebook in Blackfeet, you know? So that's one thing, another thing that our people are working for. So the alphabet, another thing that we have on our reservation now is the Food Sovereignty Act, the Food Sovereignty Program. And what a group of young people, young women are doing is bringing back all of the old indigenous recipes and coming up here. And I tried some actually this week. I tried cedar maple tea. And it tastes like it sounds, I'm not lying. I mean, it was good, but I was kind of hoping for something else besides thinking I'm drinking a tree. But Mariah Gladstone is kind of the head of it, and she does Indigikitchen. If you Google it, her recipes will come up. They're super cool. But that's what she's doing, and what makes it cool about Indigikitchen and what she's doing is she's actually breaking it down to the science, to the nutritional facts of it. Because if you drink cedar tea, it actually has more vitamin C in it than orange juice. Than orange juice. Like, you know, isn't that crazy? And she put maple in it to make it taste better, but it didn't. I've had licorice root tea, licorice roots for upset stomach. I just wanted to try it at one time, but yeah. So there's that. So I'd like to promote that. If you guys want to Google Mariah Gladstone, Happy Rock, you remember it, Gladstone. Those are super cool, super awesome resources. Another thing that that we're doing right now is the ENI initiative. And what we're doing is we are trying to make our buffalo, our bison be freelance, just like Yellowstone. You know, they're gonna hopefully be marching around up here in the next 5 years. What started it was back in the 2010s, Elk Island bison herd was actually traced, their indigenous DNA was actually traced back to here, to the Blackfeets. So they contacted our tribe. We sent people up in 2016 and brought them down. So if you guys go into East Glacier, those are the Elk Island herd. That's super cool. I was a part of that. We also got some buffalo from Oakland Zoo just this year, we got some calves, some yearlings. I think we got about 10 of those guys. And they are down right now they probably are with the herd now. They were at the AMS ranch for a couple weeks, getting them used to where they're at, but now I think they're with the herd. So that's a really super neat, cool thing that my people are striving and doing right now is our ENI initiative. One thing that we hope within the next 10 years is that we are bison eating community. You know, we're gonna try and get away from buffalo, try to have our own processing plant and everything like that. Buffalo it's not my taste, but I think I'd like it. It's really, really rich. I have to warn you, if you eat buffalo, you're not used to it. It's really rich. Might make your stomach hurt. So yeah, there's the ENI initiative, the food sovereignty. It's super, right? You know, and there's so many ranchers that want cows, and I'm just like, dude, raise buffalo, like. So yeah.
Going back to your woman talk, and I think this is true of the Blackfeet, but a lot of the tribes, when a man married a woman, he moved next to her family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and another thing in our culture was your mother-in-law. Say I married somebody, my husband wouldn't get to talk to my mother until he gifted her, until he gave her something, because it was him saying, you know, I respect this woman that I married, but I also respect the woman that she comes from. But yeah, that was one thing. And one thing in our culture and other cultures too is if you divorced your wife, she got everything. You probably got the clothes that were on your back, but she probably made them. So I would be hateful and be like, nope, give it back. I beaded those moccasins, yeah. But yes,
going back, we lived just off the Spokane Indian Reservation. I actually taught on the Yakima Indian Reservation. But the Spokanes, the Coeur d'Alenes, the Yakima, the Kalispels, they all would come over here and hunt buffalo.
Mhm.
The big downfall for the Indians were getting rid of the buffalo because the Indians,
Mhm.
and someone figured that out. If we get rid of the buffalo, we'll beat the Indians, and that's exactly what
That's what
happened.
happened.
But they got along with the Flatheads, which is the first Indian reservation, I think, on the other side of the
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah. They got along with the Flatheads, but they all feared the Blackfeet,
Mhm. Yeah.
along with the white trappers. So the Blackfeet had a real reputation. Well, there's the only Indian tribe that Lewis and Clark, who depended on the Indians,
Mhm.
had conflicts with.
Yeah, that story is actually a really interesting story, the Lewis and Clark story. When they came, my family, my uncle actually owns the land around the fight site. The fight site is still here. That's awesome that you know that. Lots of people don't know that. So Lewis and Clark did come through here. They did have a little quarrel with some, hold on my boy, with some Blackfeet braves. Long story short, these young Blackfeet boys were trying to steal their horses, and it didn't. They
took
did.
Clark's horse and left an Indian pony behind. The Indian pony was better than his horse.
Then his horse, yeah. They ended up getting our horses, but a quarrel broke out. 3 of our braves were killed, and at that time braves were 13, 14 years old. They were young boys, and in my opinion probably like, oh, let's steal these guys' horses and we're gonna get back and we're gonna be chiefs. You know, there's so many different things that probably went through those young boys' mind. So what had happened was 3 of the 4 were killed, and the 4th one made it back. Like, he ran day and night, and our people actually sent out a war party of 80 head. And they were like right on Lewis and Clark's tail. Like, the only thing that saved them was they made it to the Flathead side. And we were just like, all right, fine, whatever, you know, just don't come back. And I don't think they did. I'm pretty sure they snuck through or went way down south.
Matter of fact, they went back with a warning that you don't go into Blackfoot territory.
Yeah, it's crazy. It was super nuts.
Blackfoot, by the way, were involved in Custer's last stand.
And we were
It was mainly
killing.
the Sioux, but there was at that point, the Indians kind of figured out we can't be one tribe and beat the white people. We have to unite. So in Custer's last stand, there's Blackfeet.
There was Blackfeet, and we were actually there to hunt the Crow Scouts. So the Crow people were our enemies, have been our enemies, still kind of are. I tiptoe around Billings. No, I jokes. But the story of Custer's last stand. So Custer had these Crow Scouts, right? That's how come he could outsmart the Northern Cheyenne, the Crow, or the Sioux, and all the other. He had these Crows working for him, these Indians, you know. My people didn't like that. They were just like, geez, you traitors, we're gonna stick it to you. So during Custer's last stand, we were actually there to kill the Crows, but they were in the crow's nest where they were sitting, and they had one of their scouts seen us come in, and they hightailed it, like just left. So we got there, and the Cheyenne and the Sioux already had Custer dead, and so we're like, okay, well, good job. We're gonna go home. Do you have a question?
So when you were talking about like rankings and stuff, you mentioned like a hair bun thing on a warrior. Like, is there a certain task that has to be accomplished for a warrior to carry that honor?
To carry a top knot?
Yeah.
Just don't get killed.
In South America, they have this. I think it was the Aztecs. Like, back in the BC era, I think it was like 1500 BC. They would give you a warrior like this shell necklace. If the warrior could have 30, I think it was 30 bullet ants bite him at once.
Oh yeah. See, we weren't like that. We never had rite of passages. That's kind of what that is a rite of passage. We never had that. So my people, if you were a boy, you grew up knowing a man's job. If you're a woman, you grew up a woman's job. The boys played certain games that made them tough. We have run and scream. That was a game that was played for buffalo runners. And what you do is you run and you scream at the same time. And it's super hard. It is like, I can probably make it like from here to that tree. But that was something that was kind of like a rite of passage, because if you could scream and run a far distant, then you can outrun some buffalo, hey? And that's what the buffalo runners did. Was the boys, they dressed up as calves at the end, and they would pretend to be lame or pretend to be sick. And buffalo, they're a really protective herd. They're really protective. And so the boys, once they got the herd's attention, another group of warriors would come from the back dressed as wolves, and they would push them. And the boys would get up and run as fast as they can. And what those boys did was they jumped off the buffalo cliff. They jumped off of the buffalo jumps. And do you think you could outrun buffalo? Like a whole herd? I don't know, but I think faster. Yeah, you, as long as you, that's a good point. You outrun the guy next to you, you're fine. But we also played hoop and arrow, which was another, it was almost a gambling game, but the boys would play it, and two boys would be at one end, and they'd throw hoops, and you'd shoot arrows through them. That's a fun, super fun game, but what does it teach you? It teaches you accuracy. So we never had rites of passages. It was just survival. Like I said, the men before war, they'd put the top knots in and they would paint their faces, you know. I think that's another reason why we were really scary people, is we were smart in that aspect of intimidation. That was our whole, my people's biggest thing was intimidation. And where we get our straight up war bonnets from is actually a war. The straight up bonnets, they're war bonnets, because there was a tribe, there was a band of Blackfeet, it's a small band, southeast of us right now, and one of the scouts caught wind of some Sioux coming up. They were gonna, like, the Sioux were probably like 3 to 1 our men, and we knew we were gonna get mucked out, like these Sioux were coming to kill us. And one of the men had a dream, and in his dream he was told to make this bonnet, this straight up bonnet. So they did. They stayed up all night. All the warriors made these great big flamboyant bonnets. And the story I was told was we stood up on a ridge and we waited for the Sioux. But like I said, we were 6'7", 6'8", and that bonnet probably adds, what, another 2 feet? So if you were the Sioux rolling up on this ridge and you seen these great big huge beings standing there, I think you would think twice, because they did. That's the only war. That was the only battle recorded from our people that there was 0 casualties, because the Sioux just stopped and were like, well, nope, we're gonna go back, sorry, you know. But that's where the bonnets came from. The war bonnets were actually made so we can scare you, because that's like being a 10-foot tall being, you know. That's basically like, they were probably just like, oh my God, what are these people, you know, especially if you're on a ridge, you can't see your face, you know. They were probably just like, oh, nope, we're gone. But yeah, but one thing I have to tell you is when we went to war, our warriors tied themselves to trees. Why do you think we did that? So yeah, so the tree wouldn't get away, guys. No, so we wouldn't run away. And you either died or you survived not long enough so you can get yourself out of there. And there are stories where there were boys that cut themselves loose and took off. And when the battle was over, they were reprimanded. They were punished hard too for doing that, because that's cowardly, you know. Stand and fight for your people. But yeah, there's no rite of passages. I think the only rite of passage thing that is a rite of passage would be a vision quest. But really, that was all prayer. You gotta understand, back then we were very pure people. Everybody was pure thousands of years ago. And I've heard stories of elders saying that our medicine men could bring back people that were dead, that we could talk to things, that we could see spirits, you know, and I firmly believe that. I do. I've seen things that's not of this world. I can tell you, I've prayed in ceremonies.
Indians had some sort of spiritual connection. Like Crazy Horse had the dream that white men couldn't kill him, but it'd be one of his own kind that did. And Red Cloud had a similar dream.
And Geronimo made his people disappear.
I can't think of an Indian chief, but he was 6'4" or 6'5", had a dream that if, a vision that if he ever, and a very fierce warrior, that if he ever ate anything before battle that was from the white man, that he'd be killed. And one of the squaws in the tribe fed him either, I think, out of a pot that was, you know,
Oh,
white.
probably, yeah.
Yeah. So he didn't want to fight, but the Indians needed him, so he finally gave in and he was killed.
Yep. And
so
you know,
these visions had something.
they are important. I know one story that my people were told was one of our chiefs, he had this dream 4 nights in a row, and it was a buffalo. And it kept killing him. It just run and kill him in his dream. And the 4th night, he could stand him off. He could stop that buffalo, and he said, "How come you're killing me? What's going on?" And so the buffalo said, "Something's gonna come that's gonna help you hunt my people. We don't need buffalo jumps anymore." Because buffalo jumps, we were kind of really good at only herding off as much as we wanted. But you know, again, if you have 200 buffalo running one way, it's pretty hard to get them to stop. And so what had happened was we got the gun. Our chief dreamt of the gun. And that buffalo told him, "You're going to have something that's going to help you. You know, only pick what you need. It's going to be more efficient." And we got the gun and the horse. And then we inevitably stopped using buffalo jumps and our pishkins, because it was easier to be like, okay, we're going to shoot these 10 buffalo and that's it, you know. But yeah, vision quests were a huge thing. Like I said, all the trails that you'll take were most likely made by my people, and were most likely made by men. There are stories of women going on vision quests and fasting, but it was mostly men. It was the warriors seeking guidance, seeking something. But other than that, yeah, if you wore a top knot, it was a taunt. It was, okay, come on, get close enough to me. And I'm pretty sure they probably were like in front of like their enemies' faces, like, come on, and then killed them. You know, if you're this close to my face, I can probably get you before you can get me. Is there any other question?
Yeah.
Oh.
What's the story of Napi? Do you know that story?
Napi?
Yeah.
Which one? There's so many. Okay, so.
Was he the sort of the old man of the tribe?
So
from 10,000 years ago?
He
What's
was, what I was told in my interpretation of Napi was, okay, so we have creator, right? We have Istapatpio. We have Apistatuki, the giver and creator of life. They're different from Napi. They made Napi. And he is this old, like, spunky old man who liked to lie and play tricks. Well, he made everything. Napi went out in the world and made everything. Made the animals, and when he got bored of the animals, he made us. But Napi had so many different things. Like I said, he made all of this, but he also caused a lot of things. And Napi stories were actually told to our children because they have morals and values. They were actually social structured stories. But he was the one that flipped the mountains. If you know, a fun fact about the Rocky Mountains is they're completely different from any mountain range in the world. For some reason, our peaks age differently. And there is a story that the mountains were gambling with Napi and they cheated him. So he flipped them over. But what other place in the world has peaks that are younger, are older than the bottom? You know, it's weird. There's also stories of Napi and the bullberries. Long story short, he's seen these bullberries in the water. He kept trying to get them, and then he almost drowned. So when he was laying on the bank, he saw the bullberries, you know, above him, and he beat them with a stick. But bullberries have thorns on them. So that's how we get them. We would put rawhide under there and beat them, and they'd fall down. So Napi was like Jesus, but not. I mean, it's hard to explain. He was an old trickster man, though. Napi. There's so many stories of Napi. Like he was a being, not of us. He wasn't human. He had magic. He had power, but he was somebody that went out in the world and did crazy things, and then got in trouble. And then we were like, okay, well, don't do what Napi did, because you're gonna drown. But Napi was essentially the person that made us. But we know that there's creator. We know that there's a God. He was just like his helper. Like I said, like he was like his Jesus. Like he was like our Jesus in a sense, where he went out, he gave us medicine. I actually heard long time ago when I was little, these old men were laughing and joking, and they said, Jesus met Napi. Nuh-uh, Jesus didn't meet Napi. They said, he did. He went across this big water, and he watched him carry the cross. And that old man said, do you not believe me? And I was, no. He said, what do Catholics burn at funerals? They burn cedar. And he said, and what does Jesus wear? And I said, a cross. Well, we put up bunny crosses. We put the morning star behind our teepee. And so that was one of the stories that I was told. And I firmly believe that Jesus and Napi, I mean, that blew my mind. You know, where did they get cedar across that big old ocean, you know? But yeah, Napi was somebody who lived here. Napi was somebody who helped us. He was a being of great importance to us, a person of great importance. And the story is that he went away, and when we need him the most, him and Scarface, when we need them the most, they're gonna come back and take our people. That's just the story. I've never, like the old people say, well, when we need him, they're gonna take us away. And I said, take us away, where are we gonna go? They said, I don't know, Napi's gonna take us somewhere. You know, so if there's ever an apocalypse, we're gonna survive. No. Did you have a? Curly Bear Wagner? I think, I don't know. No, not with the INI initiative now. He has been a part of Native America Speaks, so he was one of the main Blackfoot people that brought this program here. But is Curly Bear dead? He's gone? Yeah, he's gone. Yeah, no, the INI initiative, sorry, the INI initiative started in 2011. But I don't think he had a hand in it. Urban Carlson, Terry Dahl does it now. She's kind of the head coordinator of it. Urban Carlson, Earl O'Person, there's 5 other men that I can't think of right now, but they were all a part of it. Because really it was the Elk Island National Park that contacted like probably like a secretary at the tribal office and was like, hey, we have these buffalo. And from there on, it just spread like wildfire.
Smokey right at the door said that they had been talking about
Smokey.
since like the 80s.
Since the 80s?
Yeah.
Most likely.
Yeah, but this is
Yeah. The INI initiative is way different.
If you have more questions, you can talk to Trace after this program.
Oh.
But thank you so much.
Oops, it's 9 o'clock, sorry. What are these people? Cool. Thank you, everyone.